Hello everyone and welcome back to another World of Tanks console video. My name is Xenozach and today's video will be focusing around the brand new Tier 7 French Premium Light Tank, the HMH AMX 1357. One of the two released in the HMH bundle for this month, and quite a little devastating tank it is. Just giving you a little pass through of this tank, and this is actually a re-recording. Just a quick heads up on this. What happened originally is normally I would include an Ace Tanker gameplay of this tank following the tank comparison, but unfortunately I had to redo it because the original file got corrupted. Not sure how to make up for that other than the only other gameplay I could find that I did have is a first class mastery badge. So rather than an ace tanker, you'll still get a first class. Not the best or stuff I normally try not to do, but at least you're able to see some of the strengths and weaknesses of this tank. But without further ado, let's get ourselves stuck into the tank comparison sheet. So right off the bat, you'll probably notice something a little bit underhanded from me. Carrying on from that, I decided to compare the HMH AMX 1357 to the AMX Chaffee. That's right, I decided to go with a little bit more underhanded tactic, and I'll explain a little bit more while we scroll down. So the AMX 1357 is of course the Tier 7 French light tank. The F224 AMX Chaffee is quite the rare tank indeed, as it is a console exclusive, and I will try to have one of those tank reviews for that tank in the future as soon as I can get a few more ace tankers or an ace tanker gameplay I feel is worthy enough for it. But it is a Tier 6 French light tank. Firepower, the AMX 1357 takes the lead first with 32, beating out the 26 on the Chaffee. But we'll talk about these guns. A 57mm caliber gun versus a 75mm caliber gun. So you would think that would give you a little bit different in reload. Well, unfortunately for you, they both get 16 seconds of reload time. However, if you decide to pick up the AMX 1357, it has a 1-second clip reload, beating out the 1.7 on the AMX Chaffee. And this is clearly something to take into consideration when you just want to be going in, emptying a clip, and going out. You get a 20 rounds of minute base rate of fire, beating out the 12.86 on the AMX Chaffee. The clip size is 8 on the 1357, and it is a unique 8-round clip, as I don't believe anything else has that besides the lower tiers. Don't quote me on that because someone will clearly point out something I don't know. And the Chaffee holds 6 rounds in its clip. Now, something unique about the 1357 is that it only has 2 rounds or 2 choices of ammunition, either AP or APCR, while the AMX Chaffee has AP, APCR, and HE. But the penetration on the 57 is 143 on the AP rounds, 195, and regardless of which ammo you decide to use, 90mm of penetration, where the AMX Chaffee decides to pull it up with the 75mm to 144mm of penetration and 202 on its APCR. Now, it's clearly a little bit more of a favoritism on the 57mm part, where even though it's using a 57mm caliber gun, 143, really wargaming, 143 to 144 with a 75. Man, they're really pushing this. However, no matter which ammo you choose on the Chaffee, 135 will be your average. And I say this wholeheartedly, if you decide to use HE on this tank, what the hell are you doing? But for those of you out there who decide to go against the quota, 38 millimeters of penetration on its HE, 175 on its average damage. Shell cost 85 on the AP rounds of the 1357, 2800 on the APCR, 109 on the standard AP rounds for the Chaffee, 2800 on its APCR. So they do have the same shell cost for its APCR. However, the AP and APCR on the 1357 takes the lead with its shell velocity 1141 on its standard AP rounds and 1463. Now these are quite fast rounds, but you will clearly see the difference with the APCR, as you will not have to give that much lead. But 1141 on an AP round for a tier 7 tank it's very power creeped. Just saying. 1,000 meters a second on the AP rounds of the AMX Chaffee, 1,250 on the APCR, and again, if you decide for some odd reason to load HE 1,000 meters, so really, do you want to? I'm just pointing this out here. As lackluster as it feels, you only have 48 rounds on the Chaffee, which is why I never recommend taking any HE rounds. And 72. Now, something I should point out here, this is after Wargaming decided to do a small patch on the 1357. Previously, I believe the rounds was 56, and they decided from community feedback to up the ammo to 72. This is something I wish they would do for the AMX Chaffee, because only being limited to 48 rounds is quite horrendous, as you end up going through most of it quite fast. So, something to point out about these tanks, and something that is not marked on here. The maximum potential damage that you have in the clip of the AMX 1357 is 720. Just so I double check that, let's pull out my handy dandy calculator. So, just giving you guys a heads up, 8 rounds times 90 will give you 720. Just pointing this out here. While you have 6 rounds times 100 and almost made a mistake there. 35, 810. So they're 720 to the 810 maximum clip damage that you can do in each tank. That should help you distinct the 1357 to the Chaffee as in deciding which gun is better on the tank. But again, to each his own. This inner clip reload makes me feel the 1357 stands out as its own, and it is a tier 7 light tank compared to a tier 6 Chaffee. DPM on the 1357 beats out the AMX Chaffee with 1800, but only slightly with 1736.1 for the Chaffee, and that is not too bad just to fall right behind, and that is probably because of the rate of fire. 2.3 is their aim time, but 0.36 beats on the Chaffee beats out the 0.37 on the AMX 1357. However, the Chaffee gets or loses out in gun elevation because the 1357 gets 12 degrees of gun elevation and the Chaffee only gets 9. But both tanks are limited to 6 degrees of gun depression all around. Hull traverse speed on the 1357 is 48, and turret traverse speed is 45, losing out to the 56 on the MX Chaffee on the hull and 46 on the turrets. Mobility stat on the MX Chaffee, 34, losing, 1357 loses with 34 to the AMX Chaffee's 52. I don't know what happened there. I just blanked out. Engine power 250 for the 1357 clearly doesn't stand up to the 560 on the AMX Chaffee. Its power to ton weight ratio is a lot better with 28.23 to the 17.1. Both tanks have 20% fire percent chance, so that is clearly up to you whether you decide to swap out the fire extinguisher with any other consumable. However, as odd as it is, with the smaller engine, 61 kph forward, this is the max speed that the 1357 can go, and 23 in reverse, beating out the 56 on the Chaffee and full going forward, and the 21 going in reverse, which is odd even though it gets a smaller engine, but hey, tier 7 is tier 7. However, the Chaffee does take the lead in the ground resistance, with 0.8 beating out 0.6 on hard, 1 beating out 0.7 on medium, and 1.7 beating out 1.4. So on ground resistance wise, the Chaffee manages to pull ahead, and that is probably what gives you the higher mobility stat on the tank. Survivability stat tends to favor the AMX 1357, and that is because 890 is its hit points. The survivability stat being 22, only slightly beating out 17 on the Chaffee. The overall armor thickness, the thickest part of your armor is 50 millimeters on the AMX 1357 versus the 40 millimeters on the Chaffee. Now, take this into consideration, regardless of the armor thickness, you are dealing with tanks that fire higher rounds than both your armor. And unless you decide to hit on some funky angle, you clearly stand no chance of bouncing any shots. But the thickest part of the tank for the 1357 is the turret, the front of the turret, which is 50, and both the front of the thickest part of the AMX Chaffee is the front of the hull with 40. Other than that, the hull or the turret is basically the same. I'm sorry, I mistakenly. The strongest part of the 1357 is not the turret, it is the front of the hull, which is 50 millimeters. I apologize for that. I clearly backtracked and decided to jump around a little bit. So the concealment stat, we both should realize by now that whether moving or is stationary, a light tank maintained its camo concealment stat, so 0.33 for both for the 1357 and 0.28 for the Chaffee. So the 1357 with its 69 concealment stat beats out the 58 on the Chaffee. The spotting stat is 84 for both tanks, and that is because they both use the same radio as well as view range, 390 and 750. However, the tank costs will differ, and that is because this is a tier 6 versus its tier 7, 3,800 gold for this AMX Chaffee versus 6,700 gold for the AMX 1357. Now keep in mind that this is for the base tank with no 100% trained crew, no garage slot, and no bundles, which unfortunately will hurt you because that is all that Wargaming tends to sell the tanks for. However, the premium bonuses is probably what you're looking forward to. 40% on silver for the AMX 1357, while the AMX Chaffee does not, and that is because it gets the unique ability to get an additional 20% on its crew bonus, along with 50% experience bonus. While the Chaffee does not get silver, it does make up for its crew training capabilities. Premium experience bonus for the AMX 1357 is 25, but again it holds no candle to the Chaffee. And something that I should clearly point out before we continue on is that the Chaffee is a dual crew trainer, so keep in mind that you can actually train both American crews and French crews in this tank, so maybe that might help sway you in the direction of the F-22 or F-224 AMX Chaffee over the AMX 1357. However, I believe that only the 1357 is available unless it's Black Friday, because they released the French mega bundle that does include the Chaffee. So, without further ado, let's get into the gameplay. And again, as I clearly pointed out, this is something I will have to skip about. I'm going to fast forward into this game because, as I noticed before, it is very, very slow, quite a bit. And I will point out where this tank stands out. One of the main tanks or points of this tank is that it has that 8-round unique 8-round autoloader for it, and that helps it take advantage of it. And you can see some of the shots go out. That shell velocity, able to keep up with that bulldog. but the dispersion lets me down right there. So the best thing I can do to advise you in situations like this, where you are not in a decent tier 8 or tier 9 match and you end up in tier 10 matchmaking, is to hide, because on maps like these that are quite common, you in your 1357 will not stand up to a tier 10 unless by some godforsaken miracle you're a super unicum and can play this game with hacks. I don't know any other way to describe it. I really don't. I really don't. So, one thing that I'm clearly going to point out here is apparently network quality problems occurred during this recording, and I cannot help that. But takes a few seconds. Boom. Comes back to normal. Don't worry, there was nothing that happened. The game just decided to lag a little bit. And so it decided to screw with my computer when I was recording, causing that little blip there. Nothing important happened, you didn't miss anything, but I will clearly show you what you can do when you take advantage of someone that decides to screw up. In a situation like this, even though you have a 57mm, just kind of pick your targets. Whether they're heavily armored or not, you can do stuff like that.
Using a 57mm, I actually made him run away.
Now the point in that joke is clearly has to be defined. I have trouble penning the VK101P currently because I'm still getting used to it or going against it. That I have problems with 90mm and 100mm penetrating that tank, but a 57mm has no problems going through the sides of that. I'm clearly laughing at myself at that point. So rather than keep pushing this gameplay along, I'm going to show you exactly what you can do. Even if you are in a tier 10 match, you can still make a little punch, make a little dent in someone by ruining their day, and that is because this inner clip reload just means hold down the button and penetrate. All 8 rounds penetrated. Oh wait, no, that was 7. That was 7 rounds penetrated into the side of that. And unfortunately that means I was limited to 600 and... what would that be? 660? No, 6... I'm not exactly sure what that was. 600 and something. I think it was 630? No. Close enough. But only being able to do 600 damage. Wait another 15 seconds. Boom. I just hold down the button. That's all I do now. This tank is only meant to hold down the button. That is probably the best thing I can advise you to do, is take advantage of people's stupidity or misplays and just go up to them, empty a clip out, try not to get killed. Rather than continue watching this part, again, skipping forward, trying to avoid all the boring parts. This is what happens when a tier 10 gets cocky. Tier 7, 57mm. Boom. So you can clearly still penetrate.
Oh, that was the funniest thing I've ever.
Re-recordings, I hate that when I include my audio because it always gets to me when I try to commentate over it.
And I almost stole first class. That was funny.
So at my laughing there at myself, the AMX 1357 still manages to pull out 16 actual penetrations when firing 23 shots. And you can see that it still makes quite a bit of silver with 41,805 here and 1,276 base experience but with all the pens, 1,347. So something I will advise you to do is always make sure that you take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. I cannot emphasize that enough. If you don't, regardless of the amount of health you have, you will still die. And that should be evident in any tank you drive, but I have to stress it because this 57mm gun on this tank will make you feel like it was not worth it. However, when you do get into those situations where you can empty out your clip faster than the tank can actually reload or even get its gun around to you, you will feel pretty happy about making somebody rage at you. But that is it. That's all I have for this one, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like down below. Or if you decide that you have a better gameplay than in your stockpile of videos, please feel free to send it in. The email is linked. Just go to the about info on the YouTube page and send it in to me. Just feel free to let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys next time.